welcome. My name is Ryan, and please welcome my co-host, Pastor Mel Mullen.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Give the Lord one great big praise for what he's doing with Success Builders. Will you do this as we get started? And please come from the tables down there, and let's join, and let's have a
seat,
wonderful
have a
time.
seat, have a seat. Yeah.
Have a seat. I'd like to have a word of prayer with you all as we start. We're just going to ask the Lord to grace this evening with his presence and get us ready to multiply. Heather and I just got back from 5 weeks in Hawaii, part-time work, part-time rest. And I came back with a word for my life for the next 10 years.
Wow.
Would you like to know what that one word is? It's the word multiply. And so everything I do has a purpose to multiply. Every church, every ministry, every business, everything I'm going to do in the next 10 years is going to multiply, is going to move into multiplication, not just addition, but multiplication. And so get ready for the greatest years of your life. Mine are just about ready to pop loose, Ryan.
Well, I thought you were going to say your word was work, because I've never seen someone work like you. And so I was like, oh, if his words work, I can't imagine what Pastor Heather's thinking. But she's giggling over here in the front. So tonight we have a really great night for you. You've heard of Pastor Kevin and Sheila from Champion Center. Well, they've sent their top business leaders who helped run their legacy and fund their building projects to us tonight, Dave and Terry Rich. We're so excited to have them. And their little first business they started was recycling cardboard. Okay, if you can start there and build up to where they are, I mean, anyone can do this. And that is the story tonight, that it's simple if we do it God's way.
Yes, and of course, we're welcoming online. We just had a Zoom call with many pastors on the line, and some of the new starts of Success Builders, for instance, Steve Barker's wife, Joanne, they've started a Success Builders in Cumberland Beach, Ontario. That's just, and there's several Success Builders movements that are getting started in many different local churches. It's so exciting, and many of them are on the line tonight. Storyside, Pastor Micah Pelkey's group is on, and give them a big hand.
Yeah.
They're on the line.
Welcome,
actually
guys.
Tonight, and it's so good to have Storyside and many other churches. The Pancrants are on from Penticton and many others. So it's exciting.
So exciting. And what God is doing in the body of Christ right now, so many people are putting up buildings. So many people are moving forward, breaking walls down. The kingdom is expanding. People are hungry for the gospel. It is time, and it is such an important time that we get encouragement. So to start us off tonight, please put your hands together for Pastor Mel.
Yes, I'm going to talk to you. Tonight's theme is called Build a Legacy. I want to tell you a story. About the year 2000, I was speaking in some international location, don't have a clue where it was. I do about 7 international trips every year. I flew into Toronto, and I was getting ready to board a flight to come from Toronto to Calgary, of course, to be home. And I walked over to the newsstand, and there was a Life magazine. Life magazine was a very popular magazine. It was printed about once a month, and it featured great stories. In that Life magazine, I flipped it open, and it was the story of Alberta. And it began talking about the different cities. I wish I had kept a copy of that great Life magazine. I just remember it in my mind. Talked about the city of Calgary and how Calgary was the center of finance for Alberta. And really, a lot of businesses, banks, and everything had moved at that time, even from Montreal and different parts of the country, had shifted to Calgary, and how Calgary was becoming a center of finance, especially for the oil industry, and people were making multiple millions and millions and billions of dollars of decisions in the high towers. Then it shifted the conversation or the writing over to the city of Edmonton. And of course, I call Edmonton the dirty city. It's the city of industry where, no, don't boo me. This is a fact. It's the city where all the trucks move out of Edmonton into the north, and it's where all the industry, the money is determined there. But the activity of the oil industry at that particular time moved north into Grand Prairie and into Fort whatever it was, and it was up there, and so Edmonton was the industrial city of industry. A great city. Give Edmonton a big hand. Come on. Yes. You need money and work, right? You got to have money and work. And then it started talking about the other cities, the smaller cities, like Medicine Hat, the beautiful farmlands. And it talked about Lethbridge as being a great community city where families and people lived and enjoyed life. And the story actually went like this, and it said, and when we were driving down from Edmonton, there was a city called Red Deer. And as we approached the city of Red Deer, we saw churches. In fact, it accounted to the fact that there were churches in many of the corners of the city. And they began to talk about Red Deer as being a Bible Belt city. Come on, somebody. And I just patted myself on the back. Come on, amen. Because I said, I'm part of that. Because they said, as we were driving past, there were some of the churches. Now, let me tell you something. We're building a legacy. Come on, somebody. It's a Christian legacy. We're going to turn this city, come on, amen, into a center for Alberta. Come on, amen. With the building that we're building, it's a place of where Jesus is preached, the gospel is presented, and Red Deer will become one of the greatest church cities not only in the nation, but I believe it'll be a leader in the world. And I had a conversation with my son as he opened up the story and showed me the building plans. And I said, well, that's the vision I had all along, only he had a bigger, better, greater vision than me. Come on, amen. And I said to him, you know, when we build this building, we will become not just a church for the city and the region, but we'll actually become a church for the nation of Canada. Come on, amen. And we're going to build a legacy together. Now, the Bible is about builders. It's about Noah, who built an ark. It's about Moses, who built a tabernacle. It's about David and Solomon, who built the temple. It's about Zerubbabel and Ezra, along with Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the prophet, who rebuilt the temple. It's about Jesus, who came and took his disciples up to Caesarea Philippi, introduced them and established who clearly he was, and he said, I will build my church. Now, the wonderful story about, and there was Nehemiah as well that built. But the wonderful story about many of those building programs was they did it together. Moses said, who will bring willingly an offering to the Lord? And they built the tabernacle. David said, this is what I've given. What will you do? Haggai the prophet pointed his finger up into the suburbs of the city. They had come back. The city had the temple had lying dormant for about 14 to 18 years. There was opposition that came to their building program, and they scattered, and they were building their houses, their sealed houses on the top of the hills in their subdivisions in Jerusalem. And he said to them, it is time for you to build the house of the Lord, and began prophesying against their negative attitudes until they started running to the hills for the rocks and for the wood, bringing it down to rebuild the house of God. I'm telling you something tonight. It is time for us to build a legacy together. And we're going to learn a little bit about that from the story of our great friends here from Pastor Kevin Gerald's church, and Ryan will introduce them to you. And let's decide. We're just going to partner. We're going to build. We're going to see what God will do in building a legacy for God's glory. And let's get our minds focused on it, get prepared for what we're going to do next Sunday as we bring our special gifts to the Lord, and let's see what the Lord will do. Ryan, come and introduce our special guest tonight.
Thank you, Pastor Mel. Hey, yeah, give Pastor Mel a hand. Well, it is always such an honor to bring guests like this from afar who've gone before us, who've built other buildings, who've stood beside their pastor, and have been loyal for years. And I love that. I love loyalty. I love people who stick it out, who plant roots, who have their pastor's back no matter what. And these are those kind of people, right? And they've partnered with Champion Center for years, and they have a unique relationship with their pastor. I love how honoring they are of their pastors. If we get nothing else from them, if we get that loyalty and honor, I think we're in for a real treat tonight. Can you please stand and help me welcome Dave and Terry Rich from Champion Center. Dave is fresh off of rotator cuff surgery and refused to skip this, okay? And your mic's just right there, Terry. Okay, guys, welcome. So glad you're here. Okay, now, for the people who weren't in service this morning, let's start at the beginning. Dave, when you, we're going to start the story from functioning addict, okay? So you were alcohol and drugs. And alcohol, drugs. Is that mic on? Okay. Drugs and alcohol.
Drugs, alcohol, down in San Jose, California. Really hard life. There was about 8 of us that ran around together down there, and 8 to 12 of us. If I'd have stayed there, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Wow.
Because there's 2 of us left, and we both left. One went to Albuquerque, and one came to Washington State.
Wow. And you're in that hard life, and then you go through a traumatic event. You lose your wife and your son in one night.
Yep. One night, the whole world came upside down. About day 52 of 156 day stint in the ICU unit, I had my first conversation with God, and it was not pretty.
Right.
There was a lot of F-bombs flying around inside that hospital room, and asking him if he is that big and powerful, he better make something come good out of this.
Right. Intense.
Yeah.
And then you met Terry.
Then I met Terry. Yeah, thank God. 7 years later, in the Northwest, and we ended up working in a store together, and she would try to talk to me, and I would tell her I'm on the clock. And she would go home at night, and she has a very unique way of stating her feelings about that.
Why are you wasting your time talking to this guy? You're from 2 different worlds. He doesn't have a clue, and yet I'd find myself going back because I could see the hurt in the man. And I didn't know what he'd been through, but I could feel it. And I thought, this guy needs God like nobody I've met before. And so I just kind of kept up, and he finally decided to go to church with me.
That's awesome.
So, went to church, got baptized. Our relationship continued to grow, and I was having a conversation at that point with God, and it was much different than it was 7 years before that.
Right.
And I said, God, I love this lady, and I'd like to spend the rest of my life with her. And I was still deep in the addiction and everything, and he said, that's fine, but you're not taking your mess there.
Right.
You need to get rid of it. And I said, oh, I've tried that many a times. That's not something that you just easily walk away. And he says, you never asked me for help.
Right. Wow.
And that day I poured everything out, the drugs flushed, and I wish I could sit here today and say I never craved it again, I mean, there were times, and you just really, I mean, through this rotator cuff, I'm scared to death of it. Because Terry told me early on, you ever go back to that, I'm gonna clean your clock. And so.
Well, that's not all she told you. Didn't she tell you something else?
Something about I'll take everything you own?
Yeah, she'll take everything you own. Yeah.
So I gotta go have rotator cuff surgery, and I'm telling them no narcotics. Because I mean, I'm 35 years away from that, but it's a life,
Right.
it's a
Amen.
lifestyle, it's a decision.
Amen.
Yeah.
So you get cleaned up, and then, you know, you start this relationship, and Terry, didn't you introduce him to the concept of tithing?
Well, I did introduce him to tithing, and some of it was that I was out of church for a while, and we started going to Champion Center, and about the second week that we're there, Pastor Kevin goes, "You know what you should be doing. You should be paying your tithes." And I was like, because I had been paying my tithes for years and years and years, but I didn't have anywhere to pay them. And I was going there, but I wasn't paying my tithes yet again. And so I told Dave, I says, I got to start paying my tithes. And he goes, huh? And I said, you give 10% of everything you make to God, you know, and then you give offerings on top of that. And go ahead.
And I was like, so I give up my cigarettes, I give up my pills, I give up my alcohol, and now you want me to give away my money? Come on, I mean, how does that even look like something that would be right? So she introduces me to the scripture that says, test me in this and see if I won't throw open the floodgates of
Right.
heaven. And so I pushed my weekly paycheck to the side, and I started a business called Mustard Seed Enterprises, and I would drive around and pick up cardboard on my way home from work, and I would take it and recycle it and sell it, and I would pay my tithe on that. That first tithe was $2.38, and I just watched that. It went from that, we had a little farm, so then I started taking the money from that, and I was buying grain to feed the pigs and selling the pigs at auction, and this little test me in this started growing, and I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. And I remember one time, as business went on, and we're growing in real estate and different things, I said to Terry, I says, don't get used to this, because this isn't the way business is. At some point, something's gonna pull out from underneath us, and we're just not. I'm just so used to the business world in a secular world, so.
Right. That's incredible.
It never did.
Yeah,
It kept growing.
kept growing.
And growing,
Yeah.
and growing, and you knew the force behind it was God,
Right.
because we honored him with every dime that we made, and then some,
Yep.
because it's all his anyway.
Yeah,
Right?
Right.
None of it belongs to us. He said, you can use this while you're here,
Yep.
but remember, I own all the silver, I own all the gold.
Right.
It is my money. You use it wisely, and I'll keep bringing it into your hands. And it begins to flow through you.
Right.
You think of ways to make money to just give to the kingdom.
yep.
And they approached us once and asked us if we could help with a thing they wanted to do in Africa. And I cleaned out my complete savings because I had such a heart for Africa. And it was the first time we ever saw Pastor Kevin speechless. It was Christmas Eve, and we went into his office, and we had a check for $85,000. And I'm sorry I'm mentioning amounts, and gave it to him and said, this is for the house in Africa. And they both, Pastor Sheila cried. He was speechless.
No.
And we've just found areas like that where we just give whatever it takes. They need speakers. Give to the speakers, whatever. Anyway, I'm sorry, I stole your story.
No, it's all good, honey. You run with it.
That's amazing.
Off script a little bit.
I know.
Yeah, just a little.
You got me tearing up here, Terry. Easy now.
I know.
Me.
God has
Me.
been
You got me tearing up,
amazing.
not just you.
I know, but
Okay.
God is so amazing.
So you guys have a unique way of building business, how you
Yep.
like start small and work hard and have a side hustle. Can you explain how you grow business from like having a cardboard recycling to what, like, how did you go to land development? Like, what is the process?
So I always have this saying when people ask me that question, I say, don't quit your day job.
Right.
And so your day job is what is providing for your family, providing your tithe, your offerings and stuff. But then you go and you start a side hustle. And your side hustle is not a side hustle that you work when you feel like it. Your side hustle is another job.
Right.
And so now you're working half days because you're a business owner. You're working 24 hours in a day, so you just work half the day. You work 12, 4 in one, and 8 in the other, and back and forth until you get them both going. And when the side hustle begins to increase over your day job, then we would take and sell the day job business off, and we would rely on the side hustle to become our new level and our new day job.
Right.
And then go up and start another side hustle after that. And we've literally done that 6 different times.
Right.
And some of the businesses we would sell off, and some of them we would keep. We currently run 6 different LLCs from
Right.
cardboard.
From cardboard, starting with cardboard.
Yeah.
Well, when I hear your story, I'm like, okay, if you can start just recycling cardboard and being faithful with that and watching what God does, anyone can do this,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Anyone that's going to, Ryan, when I shifted from understanding tithe and offering, every church has a band that plays, and they play worship music, and they kill it. It's their heartbeat. They know when they come off stage, they are flying higher than a kite, and they just nailed it. And I feel like the church, people that are high-level givers, feel like they're supposed to shrink back and not talk about it
Right.
because it's sinful or whatever. But when I started realizing that that is my purpose, we've been called, every single one of us, to move the gospel forward. But every single one of us, God has put a different purpose in our hearts and our minds to move forward. The easiest thing we can do is create finances. If you're a businessman or woman, you draw a paycheck, it doesn't matter. Creating finances, we can do it in our sleep. It's easy. The pastors are the ones that get nasty emails. They have to reach back and pull knives out of their backs. I've seen that over the course of 27 years, and it makes me want to puke.
Right.
Because they're the ones turning themselves inside out
Right.
to let somebody just pick on them that way. They pull the knife out, they drop it, they keep moving, they never say a word to nobody about it. Not me. I'm gonna pull the knife out of my back, I'm gonna cut somebody's throat with it. I'm not gonna go there. So that's why I'm a great kingdom builder, and he's a great pastor.
Dave, you just keep making money, okay, man? You know, and Troy Walker said that to me the other day. Pastors telling us stories about leading people to Jesus and inviting people at the gym to Jesus. And Troy turns to me and he quietly says, oh, good, he's doing his job. You know, it's kind of a little joke, right? And then he goes, we better get about doing ours.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like
Yeah.
our job is to fund what he's doing.
That's right.
And to be alongside him.
Yeah.
Yep,
Right? And
yep.
so we can't, he's doing it, we got to be right there with him. Right?
And God is going to speak to me, a kingdom builder, and to you as kingdom builder, legacy people, success builders, differently than he's going to speak to your pastor. You're not going to understand it all the time. You're not going to. 15 years ago, when we started at Champion Center with the big screens and the videotape messages, I hated it. I'd walk into church and we got a video message. I'd turn to Terry and say, honey, if I want to go to the movies, I'd buy a ticket. I came here to see my pastor. I didn't come here to see a movie. And it took me literally COVID. So this was 15 years ago. COVID hits. I could have packed up my toys, been offended, and walked out of that church, but I'm a brand new Christian. I didn't know that was something you get to do. I was told that's where you're planted, that's where you stay. So I stayed there for this little bitter thing in my heart throughout the years, never said a word to my pastor about it until 2 years ago in Arizona. And he was floored. We were sitting on a stage together, and I told that story, and he looked at me and he says, I never knew that. I never knew that. But COVID hit, and I felt that's all, because the video messages became the lifeblood of the church around the world.
Right.
What if God wouldn't have spoke that to him? What if he wouldn't have spoke that to him, and I would have picked up my toys and left? That would not have been a fun moment for me during COVID.
Right. Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so you guys have this unique way of moving from one to the next. How do you see opportunity?
We pray.
He sees opportunity in everything.
Yeah.
We'll be driving down the street and he's like, oh, look, oh, I can make money with that, you know? And I'm like, okay. I don't need another checkbook. I don't need another account. Let's just keep the ones we have. But no, he sees opportunity everywhere.
And we're
And
still,
it takes me a while to buy in.
yeah, not that long though anymore.
Yeah, well.
First it was a little longer.
But like, talk to us about that. Like, how do you
So-
see what's coming and what's?
So, I don't know, I just have this thing. So my strengths are futuristic, activator, significance, competition. Me and Pastor Kevin really get it with that one because he's competitive too, and it's so
Yes.
much fun. Oh, God, it's fun with that. And so as you're walking through life and you're seeing stuff and I just see it. It just pops up. I was driving down the highway one day and I see this empty lot on a brand new interchange, and I pulled up on the lot and I'm sitting there looking at this thing and wondering why no one has put a business here. And I felt like God say to me, this is supposed to be a mini truck stop. And we had just bought another gas station and didn't have any money left. And so I go home and I get Terry and I bring her back and I set her up on that. And she says, I said, what do you think? And she says, I feel like God's saying we're supposed to build a truck stop here.
Right.
And so right there, I mean, when that confirmation comes in and you're all of a sudden saying something's going on here, so now you've seen that opportunity, you begin to do something with it. I pray every single morning coming in to deals and coming up to deals, there's only one door open or one door closer. I'm gonna walk towards that. I'm gonna take steps towards that. Doors close in my face. We tried to buy a nursery one time. And it just, boom, shut. We tried to buy a condo down just 3 years ago in Arizona. I could have wrote a check for it. I didn't want to spend the cash. They didn't want to sell it to me. I said, I don't want to buy it. I walked away from the deal. But there's only one door opener and door closer. And I rely so much on that with God. I am stewarding his money while I'm here. It's
Right.
not mine.
Right.
And if he doesn't want me to spend it, he's not going to let me spend it. If he thinks, I rely so much on that. Ryan, it might sound goofy, spooky, but that is that really in my gut, I'm going to look for opportunity and then begin to walk towards it. And it's going to either come to fruition or it won't.
So, when did you really feel like you started hearing from God on these kind of things? Like have you always heard this kind of stuff and you didn't realize it was God? Or is it like when you really pressed into your calling that you started to hear that direction?
Yeah, when we pressed into that calling where we know, I used to say we were called to create finances for the kingdom. And that was my belief. But then when it came to the point where we're all called to move the gospel forward, but the purpose, when that call turns into purpose, that's when it's an unbelievable feeling. It's coming off of the stage after you just nailed it in praise and worship. I look so forward to legacy offering every year. I look forward to the after party with that, where we all the legacy team goes out and we celebrate that. I look forward, because that's our party.
Right.
There's some people that they don't really, you can't have that conversation in the church with them. It's going to offend them. They're going to, the church is all about money. Here we go again. And, it's just, that's part of it. But the church doesn't survive without it.
Right.
And they don't survive without us. If we pick up our toys and leave, that's less things they're going to get to do for the community.
Right.
God has created us for that purpose in our life. And I solely believe that.
Yeah.
So when you have that in your heart and you begin to see opportunities, God will create opportunities for that next thing that maybe you're supposed to be giving to in the church. And Celebrate Recovery, when it came around to us down there, me and Terry bought the curriculum. We heard about it. We studied it. We took it to Pastor. We didn't take it to Pastor and say, here's a great idea for you. Hope it's successful for you. We didn't do that. He'd be like, there's the door. He's got enough things to worry about. But we did take it to him and say, Pastor, we were taking a young lady to a Celebrate Recovery across town that her parents go to our church. And I said, hey, we're missing something here.
Right.
And we showed it to him. He looked it over. This gentleman walks through the lobby, and Pastor grabs him and says, hey, I want you to start this in our church.
Right.
It was the father of the young lady we were taking to the other church.
Wow.
He looked at me like I just told Pastor what was going on with his daughter. And I'm like, no. I didn't. But those are opportunities, door opener and door closer. And we funded that for the pastor said, what's your commitment here? I says, I can commit 6 months to it. I'm a starter. She's a finisher. She's a responsible one. I drive her crazy. I know it. But I know where my level of commitment is, and I'm honest to him about it. I says, I will personally be involved in this until it launches. After that, I don't know. Financially, I'll give it everything it needs.
Right.
And that's the way we did that. Youth camp, same thing in the church. And different things. Our business, we have so many business connections. Pastor John Yaden last year, am I running too long?
No. We're good.
Okay, because you'll have to.
I'll cut you off, don't worry.
Okay. I know you will, Ryan. That's why I love you. So we've got all these businesses out there, and Pastor John Yaden calls me last year. He says, Dave, we had youth camp last year. We had 75 kids. The moms drove the food back and forth from Tacoma to Cle Elum, so that's like an hour and 15-minute drive to feed these kids up there. This year, we've got 150 kids already registered. We need a portable kitchen. And I said, okay. And he says, I'm not asking you to write a check. I'm just asking to help me with that. And I said, okay. So I'm on the phone later that day with a tenant that is putting in a hot dog stand in one of my strip malls. And we get all done talking business. I says, hey, Andy, I says, you wouldn't happen to know anybody with a commercial portable kitchen that I could borrow for a weekend, would you? And he's like, Dave, I've got a brand new one sitting in my driveway at home.
Wow.
He says, if you want it, come get it. It's yours.
Right.
We go over there. I hook up to this trailer. His wife comes out, and she gets right up in my face, and she says, hear me right now. This trailer does not come back here. It has sat in front of my house for 10 years.
He called it a brand new one?
Yeah. But they had bought it and it never got used. And it got parked in front of their house and
For
it
10
never got
years.
used. So it'd been
My
sitting-
wife would have me like strung up, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, she was very adamant about it. It does not come back here. I don't care what happens to it.
Right.
But that's how your business, I mean, having your ears and your thumb on the pulse of your church and the needs and your pastor's desires and where he wants to go, I know every place, I know every city that my pastor wants to open a campus in. I know where they're at. I know, he tells me, we have those conversations, and when I'm driving, I see a for sale sign. I'm like, honey, take a picture of that sign. What's it for? I said, pastor wants to be in this area. And we follow up with that, and we call on that. But once you put that inside you, and you're in that vein of really your purpose is to use your business and your business efforts to move your church forward, it becomes so natural to you. That's why when you ask me that question, it's so hard for me to describe to you, because it's just what I do. It's,
right.
It's how I've come up. You know, Pastor Kevin and Sheila, they mean so much to me, and they brought us into their family. I mean, I know their parents, and we've done time, went to Bulgaria with her mom, and it's just so much fun. But
You know, I hear the difference between like most business people and when I hear you guys talk is like, most people, like even myself, when I talk, I'm talking about my business. But when I hear you talk, it's like the kingdom's business.
yeah.
Yeah, it is.
And it's deep, like it's deep. I love that heart with you guys carry with that.
So here's how deep it is for us. We have 2 daughters.
Right.
And love them to death. We sat them down about 10 years ago and said, hey, mom and dad go down on a plane. We're dead. What are you guys going to do with the business? And they both unanimously, without stuttering, we will sell them. You guys have worked too hard. And that was brutally honest to me. But at that point, I was able to say to them, thank you, but I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen. Because we have worked hard, but we've stewarded this. We steward this, and
Right.
I don't believe that otherwise the adversary sitting like this with a bucket of popcorn just saying, well, as soon as Dave and Terry are gone, those finances are gone out of the church. That's not okay with me.
Right.
That's really not. That business was given to us for the church
Right.
to move it forward.
Right.
And I'm not going to let it see, just because we're gone, it takes out of the church. So we've got this plan that all of the business assets gets transferred into Mustard Seed Foundation, and there's a board that runs that, and the board is made up of members out of our church right now, except for my oldest daughter came back to me 2 years later and says, Dad, I want a seat at that table.
Right.
And I said, why? And she says, because as long as I'm alive, I want to make sure your vision goes forward. She says, you got it.
That's awesome. Okay. Terry, how do you pray for the business? I know you pray.
Well,
How do you talk to God?
I talk to God all the time, every day, every moment of every day, because, you know, God doesn't need words. He needs heart. And he reads my heart, and he answers my prayers. He walked me through 3 miracles in the last year with people that I began to pray for them, and I'm telling you, I was like a bulldog on their needs. I just, every day, God, they need your help. They need your help. They need your help. And it's like knocking for bread. It's like, I need bread. And go away, I'm in bed with my children, don't bother me. You know, I need bread. Finally, the guy gets up and gives him bread. So I don't know how I pray for our business. I think it's more successful because we steward it for him. I only pray when I hear it may be in trouble for the business, but I think it's just the way we walk. Just the way we walk with God. It's like every day. We had the most awesome thunder and lightning storm at my house about 2-3 months ago. And I flung open my back door, and every time that thunder rolled and clapped and shook, I said, speak, Jesus, speak. We need to hear you. Send your voice forth on this earth. You know, just just awesome. And then the lightning would strike. And I stood there during the whole storm and just talked to God. Just sent him out. Just do your thing. Work on this earth. We need you. We're going down a rabbit hole that we don't belong in.
That's so good.
And so that's how I pray. It's not necessarily God bless our business, because he does it.
Right.
So,
Or you live in the blessing.
yeah.
Yeah. So how do you approach giving as a couple? Like, do you just write checks to everything, or do you pray about it? How does it work?
We do both.
We do both. We do. There's man camp last year. That was overseeing all the food and everything, and we had this big bucket of apples that we'd cooked all day long with brown sugar and everything, and we were going to eat them around the fire. And I'm looking at that and going, man, there's just something missing here. And vanilla ice cream came into my mind, because apple pie and vanilla ice cream. And I went over to the local Safeway and cleaned them out of vanilla ice cream, over $300 worth of ice cream, and brought it back. And the guys that are doing the cooking, they're like, where the heck did the ice cream come from? But stuff like that, that's worship. I don't care who knows about that, if I did it or I didn't do it. I've got access to take that receipt and turn it in if I want to, and I'm going to get paid for it. But some of those things are just like, I just want to do it with no strings attached, and just do it. And when we give legacy offering, we talk about it in advance. She takes care of our household finances. She takes care of paying all the bills. I don't know the balance in our household account. She doesn't know the balance in my business accounts, but she still pays the bills out of the business accounts, because she's responsible and I'm not. And I love that, because it saves a lot of heartache for everybody. But when it comes to legacy offering, we'll talk about a dollar amount in advance. And she'll always do this little thing at the end where she'll tell me how much she's going to give. And so then I have to go through and break down out of all of the business accounts and tell her what to write out of each account to make up that number. And then when we're all done, we add them up, and it's always more money. And I look at her, I'm like, I didn't make a mistake on my side. And she, well, I padded mine a little bit. Well, why didn't you tell me that to start with? But it's just a thing she does. So now I'm used to it, and I know that. But we do a lot of talking about our giving. Things come up in church. We talk about it and say, hey, do we want to get involved in this? Youth, when one big night they started doing that, I said, I really believe in the youth. Let's talk about, what can we do there? And so we got with Pastor John and just says, hey, you have a blank check, whatever you need.
Wow.
For 2-year time, it's yours. Just steward it well.
We bought him a lot of food.
Yeah.
You guys know youth can eat.
Yeah.
So we'd supply the food for their one big nights.
But here's the thing, when you're lining, I feel like with Pastor John, I said to him, steward it well. I had a dollar amount in my mind, and me and Terry had talked about what that dollar monthly, because he was doing it once a month, and they never went over that. And we never shared that with him. Here's a blank check.
Right.
But God was in that type of situation, and they stewarded it well, and they had fun with it, and it really built their one big night. But anytime there's something new at church, we both start talking about it. How do we help here? What can we do? And this is all above our normal tithe and offering and legacy.
Right.
New things pop up in church, new buildings, new this, new that. We talk about it, and we decide what can we do.
Right. Now let's talk about the DuPont campus, and let's bring it home on that. So you've done some land development and different things with business, and you decide that you want to help out with the DuPont campus. Tell me what happened. How'd you do that?
So, Pastor Kevin wanted to be in DuPont, and we looked at a piece of property. It's so unbelievably remarkable. The new property is right here, right? Am I pointing in the right direction over here? So it is it's in the same type of a location with the freeway, McCord, Fort Lewis Air Force Base. It's a stone's throw from the freeway. When I seen this property, I'm like, wow, that's like right where we are in DuPont on this new piece of property.
Cool.
But we showed it to him, and he says, Dave, right now I don't want to be a developer. I want a building that we can refurbish, we can do something inside it, and we can get church started down there. So we did a lease on a tilt-up, got him in. We built that interior out with 75% volunteers. Led that project up. I didn't know at the time that they were like, oh my God, this guy is crazy. He's gonna build this church with volunteers. And we did, we got it done, and got it done in a timely manner. And then they told me afterwards, Cindy Yaden says, Dave, that's the biggest miracle. When you said you were building it with volunteers, well, that's gonna be the biggest miracle we've ever seen happen. But we got it done. So, and the young people that came in there, and oh my gosh, it was summertime when we were building out, and we had a team of, I mean, my construction crew was probably 18 and under, and safety glasses, and my heart pounding the whole time because I didn't want no one being hurt. I look up one day and there's 6 young men up on a scissor lift up in putting insulation in the ceiling with these pneumatic stapler guns, and 2 guys are facing the shooter going this way, and I'm stop! And they're like, what? I says, look what you're doing. He's shooting nails at you from that side. If he misses, they're coming at you. And no one got hurt. It was fun. We had fun. But they owned that church, and they still do today. It's their home. Yeah. They built that church. So the property came up on the corner. Arco had paid $1.5 million for it, the one piece that we were looking at. And then they backed out, and I was following the property and watching it. And the people that owned it were in financial problems with it. And then when Arco backed out, we put a bid into the bankruptcy court on it. And the judge didn't even allow them to negotiate it. He stamped it, done deal, sold it to us that day. We got to write a check for it. And that was the second time we seen Pastor Kevin speechless. We took it up to, I'd called Dave Yaden, he's our business guy at church, and I said, hey Dave, I says, the judge just signed off on that property. Myself and Terry, we just purchased it. I says, is PK in town? I want to tell him. He's like, dude, don't tell him now. We got Legacy this weekend. He says, drop it on him at Legacy offering, or at Legacy dinner. I'm like, are you sure? He says, yeah, it'll be great. And so we go up there, and he's interviewing me that night, and we're talking, and the whole time I'm knowing I'm going to drop this on him at the end, and we get all done, and we stand up, and he looks at me, and I'm looking at him. He says, Dave, you got anything else you want to say? I said, well, Pastor, I says, actually, yeah. I says, that property we've been looking at? And he says, yeah, in DuPont? I said, yeah. I says, we just purchased it yesterday. We own it outright, free and clear. And he just went, he froze. And he's staring at me, and he turns around and he sees the screen. They had put the site map up on top of on the screen. And he puts his arm around me and he draws me, and he says, I can't believe you just did that to me. And I said, and Dave Yaden was sitting behind him, and I'm like, no, he set me up to it, Pastor.
Right.
He told me it would be okay.
Right. And you're just able to give that property.
Yeah, we gave it to them, and so now they're debt-free with the property. We finished we started getting traction right before COVID on a site plan with it. There's oak trees on this property, which are protected in DuPont. There's wetlands on it. It's 21 acres altogether. We needed 5 acres carved out of it. I felt very good in my gut that I could get that 5 acres.
Yeah.
And still carve off a little piece on the backside for a commercial lot that then we will sell, and we will recoup all of our money out of that commercial lot, but still been able to give the land to the church debt-free.
Wow.
So we can then take that and do the same thing in the next area that we want to go into. But after COVID, prior to COVID, we were just getting no's. The community development person there, that's the only word he knew, was no. And it just was, I was just getting so frustrated.
The anti-development team is what I call them
Yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
you know, right?
anti-development,
Yeah.
And, you know, me and Terry had made a commitment that we were gonna see this thing through site plan. That was our commitment to the church. It's yours when we have a site plan that's approved. So we're spending money on drawings and moving things forward and everything, and God has given us the grace to do that. COVID, fast forward, we just got in front of a new community development director in January 9th, and we showed her this new drawing. I cleaned house on my entire architect team. Everybody that had been helping me 5 years, we're still in the same place. Picked up the phone, terminated all that, found one lady in Cleellum. I said, I need you to do something with this property. She had me a drawing in 3 days that keeps the oak trees, that stays away from the wetlands, that gives us an extra 10,000 square feet that we weren't counting on. And I'm looking at this drawing, daylight basement for a youth building underneath it. She built around the contours of the land. She built a big cove around these oak trees that is going to be a beautiful park right in the middle of the church.
Yeah.
Long corridor that ties the main sanctuary to the youth sanctuary down on the other end. And I bring this in and I show it to her in her office, and she's looking at it, and she goes with her hands over the top of it, and she says, Dave, you have just mitigated every single issue with this property, with this new site plan. She says, I have only been here about a year, but I've been following this land because it's the only piece left in DuPont to develop.
Wow.
And she says, I know this thing has been challenging for you, but this works. So next, we're in for our final site approval next week, or next month.
Wow. Well, Dave and Terry, thank you so much for sharing with us. God bless you, and we so look forward to having you back in the future. And we'll be praying for your site plan to go through. God bless. Let's hear it for them. You guys are awesome. That's fine. Yes. Thank you so much. Now we're going to invite Pastor Mel to come back. We're going to pray for you guys and then launch into our next section. I hope you guys that are with us online have got something out of that. And I hope you see the faith. You can start with a $2.32 tithe and move up to giving millions that God's going to provide for.
Okay.
Amen?
So here's what we're going to do tonight. Those of you that are online with us, the many churches online, I invite you, because we're going to go offline with you, and you're going to sit with your circle of leaders and discuss what did we learn from tonight and what can we do to build a legacy building or legacy offering or whatever the Lord's calling you to do. Discuss it, talk about the future of your church, because what God is going to do here, he's going to multiply there with you. So God bless you. Thank you for coming online. And then right now, we're going to have Pastor Jake come and share the vision with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us online.